Okay, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, good dawn, wherever you may be. We're here in the Afro-Euro time zone. My name is Karen A. in Jerusalem, and this is the Reco12 podcast. We are a family of recovered brothers and sisters who share our experience, strength, and hope with our recovery through the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. In this fellowship and on our podcast that you could find at Reco12.com, you'll find all kinds of addicts and people suffering with all kinds of addictions and all kinds of afflictions. You may find gamblers, workaholics, drug addicts, alcoholics, internet addicts, anorexics, bulimics, and whatever you want to add to the list, you can, because we probably had them on there. We've had people who use the big book to tackle their people addictions, Codependence Anonymous, Al-Anon, to name a few. So if you want to check out previous shares, you go to Reco12.com, and we've got a bunch of shares there. If you would like to share, I'm looking for new speakers in August, and all year round, you can message me. I will put my number in the chat, or you could go to the Reco12.com website and hit up me or Justin through there. We'd love to hear your story. And again, that's another person that might just save a life because there's other person out there who identifies with them. It is my total honor today to bring to you our fellow Stephen. I'm not even sure where you're located. I thought it was England, but you just said you're Serbian, so you'll let us know in a second. Stephen is going to share about mental illness in sobriety and how all that works out. I know there were a lot of people on the line in our rooms listening to this recorded who have struggled with different issues, whether that's manic depression, personality disorders, borderline, etc. Many of us have been diagnosed, and yet there are many of us who have recovered from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and spirit. Stephen, we will welcome you here. You will have 30 minutes to share, and then we'll do a Q&A. Participants in the audience can either write their questions in the chat, or we can unmute you. You can unmute yourself and ask your questions when Stephen's done. At the conclusion of the Q&A, Stephen, you could go ahead and pray us out. And then hopefully by Wednesday, we will have this recorded. If you like what you heard and you want to pass it on to your fellows and your sponsees, you can reach out to me and get a copy, or we'll put it on the Reco12.com website. Stephen, welcome.
Thank you very much, Karen, and it's wonderful to be here this morning. And my name is Stephen. I'm a very grateful, recovered alcoholic. And as my practice is, before I do a main share, I always say the set-aside prayer. God, today, help me set aside everything I think I know about you, everything I think I know about myself, and everything I think I know about others, and everything I think I know about my own recovery, the 12 steps, the big book, so I may have an open mind and a new experience with all these things. Please help me see the truth. So my journey has been very long to get to where I am today, sat here this morning. I started drinking when I was 14 years old. I was a very confused and fearful boy, really. I wasn't a man, I was a boy at 14. And I remember taking my first 2-litre bottle of cider, and I thought I'd found the medicine because I absolutely loved the taste. I loved it so much, and it made me feel not frightened anymore. When I look back at my life now, I'm now 58 years old. I believe I had mental illness way, way before I was even diagnosed with it. And that was probably even before I started drinking. I carried on drinking. I lived in a small village in the UK. And there was 3 things that sort of made you a man in our village. 1 was how much you could drink. 2 was what kind of woman you had on your arm. And 3 was how well could you fight. And I seemed to manage pretty well on all three aspects. At the age of 16, I could drink a gallon of beer without even looking at it. 8 pints of beer, just like that. Not a problem. At 16 years old, I'd only just left school. Legal limit for drinking in the UK was 18. So I started 4 years early. And my drinking continued because that's the social life that I was leaving. I was just living that life non-stop. And when I was very young, I was obsessed with my plastic soldiers, and all I ever wanted to do was be in the army. I just wanted to be a soldier. And so I joined the army. And the first thing that the army taught me to do was to shoot straight. And the second thing that it taught me to do was how to drink harder and for longer. The drinking culture within the forces when I was there in the 80s, 90s was absolutely off the scale. It was insane. I was a very fit young man. You know, I come from Yorkshire, and I would say I was the Forrest Gump of Yorkshire. You know, put a 50-kilo pack on my back and tell me to run to John O'Groats, I'll run to John O'Groats. Tell me to turn around again and run back to Land's End, I'll run back to Land's End, no problem. I was extremely fit, but every day I had to drink. Every day I had to drink. And my drinking got so bad that I used to have what we affectionately used to call a yellow handbag, which was 10 bottles of small beer under my bed. And I would have to drink at least one or two of those just to get me on parade on a morning. I needed that leveler, and I had to brush my teeth a lot and eat lots of mints to try and mask that I'd already been drinking before I even started my working day. During my career in the army, I saw many things which I wish I hadn't, and I don't even talk about them today. And that was when I first became known to the mental health services. I believe I had some sort of psychotic episode, and I was sectioned in an army hospital. I didn't really know what the hell was going on in my life at that time. One thing I knew I couldn't do was drink, and that was hell. Absolute hell. And at the time I was married. I was married to my childhood sweetheart. We went to school together. We lived in the same village. We got married when she was 19 and I was 21. And she gave me an ultimatum. It's either me or the army. I loved her. So even though I wanted to be a career soldier for 22 years, I decided to leave the army. And we were divorced about 5 years later. And my drinking had carried on. It had just escalated non-stop. But when I was going through the divorce proceedings, my alcohol drinking took on a whole new level. I decided I wanted to be a bit of a posh alcoholic, and I need you to understand at this time that I didn't even identify as an alcoholic then. Even though I was drinking so much, I did not identify. And in fact, you'll hear, I didn't really identify till quite late on in my drinking career. I wanted to drink single malt whiskey, and at that time it was about 35, 40 pounds a bottle. But I would drink it like it was orange juice on a hot summer's morning. And my mental health was completely out of control. I was taking the medication I was prescribed, but I was having regular episodes of mania, psychosis, very deep depression. I had many suicidal thoughts. I had some attempts of suicide even. And it was really hard for me at that time. And that's not saying that for any self-pity, because I've done enough of that in my life. But I know My drinking was my medicine. That's how I self-medicated. It wasn't about the tablets that I was given by the mental health services. The alcohol seemed to be still working. However, there came a point when the alcohol stopped working. The alcohol had no effect on me other than getting me drunk or to black out. I've lost hours and hours and hours of my life to blackout drinking, not knowing where I was, not knowing who I was with, not knowing what I said or what I did. But somehow, I managed to get home. Somebody, something was looking after me even at that point. I'm not really a religious man at this point, but I always sort of believed there was something out there, not really knowing what, and actually still don't really know what, if I'm honest with you. I carried on drinking, and then eventually, I believe I had this calling to go into the ministry, to become a minister in the Church of England, of all places. Well, I still laugh at that in some respects, because I think, how is this possible? You know, how could this be at all possible for me, an alcoholic, and yet still not admitting that I'm an alcoholic? And I did end up doing my training and then being in ministry for around 6 years. But then my drinking, again, this is the progression of the disease. My disease of alcoholism never decreases, it always increases. If I stopped drinking, which I couldn't, I would start off again wherever I left off, or even worse. And my depression was so bad at this point that I actually had to be off work. But I still kept on drinking. I went into the rooms in 2010. That was the first time I went into the AA rooms. I was very judgmental, looking around me thinking, these people are completely off their heads. I'm not one of you. I can't be one of you. That's impossible. You know, I'm a minister. I can't be one of you. You know, I do sort of, you know.
Got questions about addiction, recovery, or just life in general? Let's noodle it out together. Grab your big book, a pen, a highlighter, and a notepad, and join Nikki M and me, Justin B, on Reco12 Noodle It Out with Nikki M. Each episode, we take real-life questions, ours, yours, and those from the recovery community, and dig deep into the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous to find real, practical solutions. So, if you're ready to do the work and apply the solution, tune in to Noodle It Out with Nikki M, streaming now on your favorite podcast platform.
Godly things, not really. Because, you know, no matter what I did, I was a functioning alcoholic. I could do whatever was asked of me in my ministry. But every day I would have to drink as soon as it finished. So I could do the funerals, do the services, do whatever you like. It wasn't a problem. And drinking was a big problem. A very big problem. And I'm now married to my second wife. We've been married now for over 25 years. And that there is one miracle. Because my wife has stayed with me. I didn't lose my wife through my alcoholism. My wife's from Serbia. And so I had the bright idea to actually move to Serbia. And this is where I'm calling you from today. And I've lived here for nearly 15 years. And at first I thought, you know, my drinking would slow down. New environment, new culture, new country, new everything, you know. Still not admitting I'm an alcoholic, although I'd been in the rooms I've been in the rooms quite a lot since that time. 2010, we're now in 2025. I'm an extremely slow learner. I have to burn my hands many times before I learn not to put my hand on the hot stove. You know, I just don't get it. I got a sponsor, started working the steps. Step 4 came and the emotional pain was so much for me that I just left. That was it. And I went out drinking again. And it took a lot of time for me to get back again. So I'm in active alcoholism once again. Although I'm sort of recognizing I've got some sort of problem, but still not really even thinking that I'm an alcoholic. I've always struggled with that. Thought I'm an alcoholic. I'm a hard drinker. I'm a binge drinker. But I can't be alcoholic. Surely not. So over here in Serbia, AA is hardly known really at all. There's 3 live meetings here in this country. They're all in the capital city, and I live nowhere near the capital city. So I managed to get on Zoom because I wanted to stop drinking. I tried to stop drinking, but I'd always carry on and get back drinking. And we can fast forward to 2023, coming back into the rooms. I found a sponsor, a good sponsor. And I got to step 4 again. And again, the same thing just happened to me. I just could not deal with my past whatsoever. I couldn't deal with it. All the resentments, all the fears, everything was too much for me. And even though I had that desire to stop drinking, I could not stop drinking. And I went back out again. But thankfully, this time, I sort of started to realize even more that I can't keep living like this. You know, I keep thinking there's going to be a new experience for me every time I drink. You know, the obsession to drink, I will be able to drink like a normal person again. And it never, ever happened. But I got a job as a truck driver. And I was driving around Europe in a big truck, all over Europe. But I knew now that I really couldn't be drinking so much. It was impossible, or else I'm just going to get into trouble. I could get into an accident. I could kill people on the road. Anything could happen with an alcoholic behind the wheel. So I started to do some controlled drinking. So literally I'd have a couple of cans. And I think there's been, in a 10-month period, there was maybe twice where I maybe had 4. But I did manage to only have a couple of cans of beer every night. And I thought, great, I can't be alcoholic. If I can stop after 2, I'm all good. I must be okay. But what was going on inside my head was absolute mental torture. And I just had to give up my job. I had to give it up. And my sobriety date is September the 17th, 2024. I left my work on the 16th of September. But I couldn't remember if I drank or not that day. So I gave myself a day's grace for my sobriety day. And today I sit here and I've not had a drink since. But there's more to it than that. Because my mental health, some days, when the dark cloud comes, when it descends upon me, it literally debilitates me. I just lie in my bed in the fetal position, not wanting to do anything. Literally not wanting to drink a glass of water. Certainly not wanting to work my program. But I try. I do try. Every day I try. Because it tells me in the big book that it's spiritual progress, not perfection. And I love the big book. I don't know it that well. I'm only 9 months in, but I really do love the big book and it speaks to me greatly. It feels like it was written for Stephen, and it was, because I am an alcoholic. And I want to read you just something from, when I find the right page. I was on a meeting It was in Kent in the UK. It was a Zoom meeting, and we're doing a big book study on more about alcoholism. And this is the words that I heard from page 32. We have heard of a few incidences where people like Stephen, who showed definite signs of alcoholism, were able to stop for a long period because of an overpowering desire to do so. And those words hit me like a thunderbolt that night. And from that point on, I knew I could identify as an alcoholic. I could honestly say, my name is Stephen. I am an alcoholic. That, for me, was a divine moment. The divine entered my life. I got a sponsor again, and it was the same sponsor. I had a lot of fear around this, thinking he won't want to take me back on because I'm not. You know, I left before on step 4. He probably won't be interested. So I rang him up and he says, well, I'm quite busy actually, but let me think and pray about it and I'll get back to you. And he got back to me the next day and said, yeah, I'll take you on. And so he took me on and I started going through the steps. This is the 3rd time now I've been trying to get through the steps. And yes, I got to that dreaded step 4 again. And I had so much fear around this step 4 because I knew I had to write down all these things again and go through this process. And again, it was an emotional roller coaster ride. You know, every day I was sat there writing, crying, screaming, everything, all emotions going through me. And then I had to put it down and stop. But the difference here was I picked up the phone and I started calling people. I started telling them how I'm feeling, what's going on in my life. And you know, that was an absolute game changer. You know, a total game changer. Because it says here in chapter 5 in how it works. There are those too who suffer from grave emotional and mental disorders, but many of them do recover if they have the capacity to be honest. I am one of those. I'm definitely one of those who have grave emotional and mental disorders, disturbances, whatever you want. You know, I've got so many labels. I feel like I don't know, I've got lots of sticky notes on me everywhere saying I'm this, I'm that, you know. I suffer from clinical depression. I'm bipolar. I have affective psychosis. You know, and the list goes on. I'm paranoid. I'm agoraphobic. I don't want to go out the house. I don't want to mix with people. I don't even want to talk to people sometimes. And yet I've got this program here. It took me a week to do my step 4. I sat on it for one day on a Sunday because my pen stopped writing. So I decided, what am I going to do? Just sit on it. And I rung my sponsor up and I said, I finished Monday morning. I finished. I was excited. I was like, and he says, great. We can do your step 5 on Saturday. Saturday? I said, Saturday? It's Monday. I can't wait till Saturday. I need to do it now. No. You'll have to wait till Saturday. Oh, brilliant. So I waited until Saturday and I kept working my program. And I went through my step 5 with him on Saturday. And I got this revelation that I'm the problem. My thinking is the problem. Wow, what a revelation. I thought my sponsor was winding me up with all these questions all the time. Well, have you thought about it this way, Stephen? Well, no, I haven't. Well, maybe you could. Do you think maybe you had something to do with this? Oh, right, okay. And eventually the penny dropped. And once I finished my step 5, it was like a whole weight had been lifted off my shoulders. The freedom that I felt after my step 5 was absolutely tangible in my life. You know, I felt lighter in every way. I'm still suffering from mental health. I think I'll suffer from mental health for the rest of my life, to be honest with you. Because it doesn't say anywhere in the big book that I will be cured of my mental illnesses. It does say that I will get a daily reprieve from alcoholism if I follow this simple program. And that's what I do. And you know, when I think about going through the steps 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Wow, I actually got there. I could say on a meeting one day, has anybody gone through the 12 steps? Yes, I have. And you know, that was unbelievable that I could say that. You know, I thought, wow, I actually think I've got this program. I think I've got it. I think I sort of understand what I should do. And so now I'm a sponsor myself and taking someone through the big book who's actually, coincidence, maybe not, is just starting his step 4 today. And I wish him all the best, and I've prayed for him, and I know he'll do great. That's not about me, though. Nothing actually is about me. This program's not about me. This program was about a spiritual awakening. This program was me connecting with a God of my understanding. And I need to stay connected every day to that God of my own understanding, no matter how I'm feeling. Do you know, I think I've been on that pink cloud, but actually I don't think I was. I think it was a false positive because what I thought was the pink cloud was, I think, probably mania. I was so high, it was unbelievable. I was like the Tasmanian devil on acid. I was all over the place. And I thought I was well, but I wasn't well at all. And I had to have a change in my medication, and it brought me down. And to be honest with you, I think I'm still there sometimes. You know, I love On Awakening. You know, I remember having a conversation with a fellow, and he said, "Oh, I read On Awakening every morning." And I said, "Oh, yeah, I've read it, but it's too long. I can't be bothered to do that. It's way too long." And then he says, "Really?" And he says, "It's like 2 and a bit pages." And I'm like, "Okay, tomorrow I'll read it. I'll read it then." I promised him I would read it, and I did. And do you know what? I am so glad I read it again, because I read it this morning. And this morning, when I read it, it gives me many, many directions for my life. It gives me instructions for where I'm going. It lets me hand over everything to a God of my own understanding. My thinking, my actions, my words, my thoughts. I'm forever praying every day. Please let me know my next right step, thought, word, and action. Because if I'm in my own head, that's not going to work out for me at all. Because I am powerless over all my diseases, my illnesses. I'm powerless over people, places, situations.
Hey, Spearheads, if you're looking to dive deeper into the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous with people who live the solution, then you won't want to miss Reco12 Big Book Roundtable. Join David G., Nikki M., and me, the moderator Justin B., 3 recovered addicts from multiple fellowships, as we break down the big book line by line. In each 30-minute episode, we share our experience, strength, and hope in a real, raw, and practical roundtable discussion. So, if you are ready to learn and apply what you learn, tune in to Reco12 Big Book Roundtable on your favorite podcast platform.
I'm totally powerless. But it says in how it works, but there is one who has all power. That one is God. May you find him now. And I did find him. Even though I was and am an ex-minister of religion, it was a spiritual awakening that brought me to healing. It says also in On Awakening, which I love this bit, I love reading it. It says there are many helpful books also. Suggestions about these may be obtained from one's priest, minister, or rabbi. Be quick to see where religious people are right. Make use of what they offer. And you know, I've done that. I've spread my wings. I've not been so narrow-minded in my views. I love listening to Tibetan singing bowls now. I just love it. I actually find it so calming and relaxing. My wife's not so keen on them, though. That's not a problem. It works for me. My recovery is the most important thing in my life. And my connection with God, as I understand him, is also the most important thing. It's just like these plugs at the back of me that you can see on the screen. That's how my computer's working. It's plugged into some power. It's plugged into the electricity. If I unplug it, my computer doesn't work. So if I unplug myself from a God of my own understanding, I definitely do not work. And only recently, I had a very bad episode with my mental health. I mean, we're talking days ago. We're not talking long at all. And I was really working my program paper thin. I mean, paper thin. I was doing the bare minimum possible. Not because that's what I wanted to do. It's because that's all I could physically and mentally do. That's all I could do. So all the people ringing me, not picking up the phone. Was I ringing people? I certainly was not. My sponsor said to me, my phone's always on. There's a problem with that scenario. I have to dial the number. And that's a problem sometimes. I do not want to speak to anybody. But I still try and speak to God. No matter how it is, we're not talking fancy prayers. We're not talking anything that's eloquent. I talk to God like I'm talking to you now. I don't complicate matters anymore, you know. And I'm a big advocate of two-way prayer. Maybe some of you practice it. Maybe some of you have heard of it before. But I'm a very big advocate for it. And basically, I'll break it down. There's books been written about this, but I'm going to say it in a few sentences. I tell God exactly what's on my mind. Then I shut up and I start to listen. And I just listen. And I have a journal. It's here. I've got a pen in it. And I write down what I believe God is telling me. So, for instance, I'm going to read something from me. I'm going to share an entry from my two-way prayer journal. And this was on the 11th of April this year. And I titled it Illness. So obviously I'm talking about my illness, and that would have been my alcoholism, and that would have definitely been my mental illnesses. And this is what I believe I heard. And I want to say, every time I finish my two-way prayer, I say this prayer. God, whatever is of you, let it remain. Whatever is of me, let it fall away and not be present. I only want what God has for me. Nothing that's of me. Nothing. This is what I heard. It is my will. I am doing a new thing within you. Trust in me, for I will complete what I started. It is my will for you to be well again. It has been for many years since you felt like this. A new dawn is rising. You will shine like never before. I'm thankful for those words because I can keep reading them when I feel so low and so down, so depressed. But I know that alcoholism wants to kill me if I carry on drinking, and will kill me. Or I'll go insane, or I'll, just not be able to manage life at all. And some days I can't manage life, and it's okay not to be able to not manage life. I've had to realize that. I had to realize that I have to be kind to myself. I have to let things go. You talked about earlier when I said about have the capacity to be honest. That's the direction the big book gives me, that I need the capacity to be honest. So I'm telling you my truth today. Mental illness is still, I think, a stigmatized subject. I think even within these rooms, but that's my opinion. My opinion doesn't matter. So it's good that I could be here this morning to have that voice, to be able to just talk about mental illness openly and my alcoholism and the solution. Because now I'm 9 months and 10 days sober. And I know with hand on heart, and I'll put it there now, I have not thought of drinking alcohol. The obsession to drink has been lifted. In my darkest hour, when I would have reached for the bottle, every time, it never even flickers through my head. It is not part of my life anymore. And that's why I feel quite strongly about mental illness, because I'm one of those who suffer. I'm not special. I know there's many, many, many people in the rooms who also suffer. And not always do they share and express that. But it's definitely part of my journey. I will always be an alcoholic. That will never be taken away from me. But the obsession to drink has been taken away from me. And that is God, of my understanding, doing for me what I cannot do for myself. I am powerless. God is all powerful. And how does that work? I found the solution. They says there is a solution. I found the solution, not to my mental health problems. Still taking my tablets. In fact, I've just remembered I haven't taken them this morning. Oh, that's not a good thing. Never mind. I'll take them after the meeting. Thank you for the reminder, God. Yeah, just put that one on my mind. I don't see a timer, so I think I must be getting near the end of half an hour. I think I must be. So I'm going to leave it there. And for everyone who's listening, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for giving me this voice to be able to speak about mental health issues in sobriety. There is a solution, and I found it's been connected to a God of my understanding, working the program, following directions from my sponsor, connecting with my fellows, and starting to love myself again. Because I think at one point in my life, I did love myself. But at one point, I really hated myself. I'm a work in progress. I loved there's a guy in one of the meetings who has his profile picture. It says, addiction uninstalling. I like that. I like that. It's uninstalling. Yeah, I love that. So I'm going to leave it there. And thank you, everyone.
Hey, Reco12 Spearheads. If our recovery resources have helped you, please consider a donation. Your financial support, as well as your word-of-mouth support, keeps Reco12 running and reaching the man who is still sick. Donate today at reco12.com/support or check the show notes for PayPal and Venmo links. Every contribution helps carry the message. Thanks for being a Reco12 spearhead.
Wow, Stephen, thank you so much. That was so beautiful. And I really want to acknowledge you and congratulate you for your 9 months. And we look forward to having you here next year again. I want you to come back when you hit a year or 18 months or both, whatever suits your fancy. And I want you to share about the next frontier in your recovery. That is so inspiring. And anyone out there who is still struggling, anyone listening to this live or recorded, who is deep in the throes of addiction, this is a man before you who's getting up, working his step 12, and he's 9 months sober. You know, not everybody who leads meetings or works a 12 step is really important. You don't have to be in the room for 5 years, for 10 years. You don't have to be some superstar, you know, whatever, like Grant Cardone, 10X speaker, even though Stephen is very eloquent and he did speak it in his, you know, in his professional life, clearly. But, you know, we all work a 12 step, you know, whether you're a corporate CEO or, you know, just another drunk on Skid Row, we all work a 12 step, and you're all invited to reach out to me to share on this meeting. If you've got a strong story of recovery, sorry, excuse me. Just going to decline that. Sorry. I wanted to ask a question. I was left wondering about, you know, well, being a religious person and yet having a spiritual experience. I have a different religion, and I totally identified with what you said. It's so cool because you could be real religious and not be connected spiritually and not be, you know, lit up about higher power. Can you share about your first spiritual experience as a result of working these steps, when you first kind of found God or refound him? Or for people listening on the line, you know, the higher power of your own understanding, you know, when was that first?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, when I was a minister, you know, I was Mr. Religion. Oh, wow, I could tick all the tick boxes as you wanted. I had to do this, and this, because that's how my mind works. Everything has got to be straight. Everything has got to be done the right way. I'm a perfectionist. I just need to do everything, boom, 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 boom. And if I don't do everything, what's in my head, then I think I'm not doing it right. So I was extremely a religious person, extremely religious. But I've been on a journey, and I even believe that my conception of a God, of my understanding, has even changed slightly, definitely. And the spiritual side of things, and this is what I kept reading over and over again in the big book, it's a spiritual awakening. And it was literally, I had to put down all these religious tools that I had and let them hang lightly within my life. And I had to pick up this new spiritual way of living. Meditation was never really part of my religious life. You know, I used to struggle with silent meditation. Silent retreat, should I say, not meditation. You know, we used to go on a silent retreat every year, and it was, you know, it was encouraged for us to do so, but I just couldn't take the silence. My head is just too noisy. But now I do meditation every day, and I don't see meditation as being something very religious. I listen to a wider scope of readings from different faiths and religions, and they feed me on a spiritual basis each day. And sometimes I've got to remember that what I did yesterday maybe is not what I need to do today. Things were different this morning compared to what they were yesterday. I'm a lot more flexible now. I'm not rigid. I was so rigid before in my observations and observances of my religious sort of life. I've had to let a lot of that go. And that's okay, because I'm living what the big book promises. That if I work this program, if I go out and do 12-stepping, connecting with my fellows, reading the literature, attending meetings, being of service to others, putting others before myself, then I will get a daily reprieve for another 24 hours. So I hope that maybe answered your question.
It sure did. I mean, that is so cool. I really relate to that. You know, I kind of a born again Jew, and I grew up with all the Eastern religions and meditation and silent retreats. I was really into that. And then when I became religious, I just did formal prayer. And since working my program, I've also, I mean, this is what's so cool about this all-inclusive program, is that I'm a person in a different country with a different religion. Obviously, I'm a different gender. And I've had a similar experience. I identify with that today very much. Now my meditation isn't like this thing of the past or this, Eastern California girl thing. It's very much a part of my connecting to my higher power, and so necessary, so centering. So like yesterday, I was like, oh, I need to make my raw food juicing and I need to meditate. I was like, okay, well, I'll do my juice and I'll pray later. Whoa, that was a bad idea. Like, our big book tells us God is everything or God is nothing. We are, we have been reborn. So we get reborn. Our spirituality, if we have it, gets reborn. Our professional lives, our physical, mental. I'm going to ask you another question. The big book says on that note that once we've straightened out spiritually, the mental and physical follow progression, as you may have seen it in your own life, in your own recovery, straightening out the spiritual and then the mental and physical following.
Yeah. I mean, for me, my experience to today, if I've been suffering from mental health pretty much most of my life before I was diagnosed in 1990, and I'm still suffering from mental health today, I can hold on to that promise, what the big book is saying. And I believe in the miraculous because I'm sat here. That's a miracle that I'm sat here this morning talking to everyone here. And I believe that it's important that I just don't fully, how do I say this? I don't fully rely on the mental health services. I have to rely on the God of my understanding to get me through it. Reading my prayer journal, it says that God wants me to be well. He wants me to be well again. A new dawn is rising. You will shine brighter than ever. So I believe that. Those, I believe, are God's words for me. But it's not happened yet. And that's okay. Patience is not one of my strong points. It's definitely one of my character defects. So I've got to be patient. I've got to be patient. I've suffered from these illnesses for so long and self-medicated with alcohol for so long. It's maybe just not the right time yet. There's more to be learned. I've got to remain teachable and open-minded about my experiences every day. And that's why I keep connected to God. I've got to, because only God can get me through this day and each day. So I hope that sort of sheds a little bit of light.
Amazing. Amazing. Did you see this question in the chat? I'm going to have to. Can you share about your experience with two-way prayer and your daily practices?
Yeah. So, yeah, as before,
After this question, I'm going to thank you profusely. I have to go do some service with my mother here, Stephen. I'm going to thank you so much for coming on here. So once you answer this question and any other questions, I'm going to actually ask you to just thank everybody and pray us out. Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah, I will do
Amazing.
that. So
thank you.
I'll just get
beautiful, and we're rooting for you. We're with you.
Thank you. Yeah, so I learned about two-way prayer through a couple of workshops that I did on my home group, in fact, and it was something completely new to me. I mean, completely new. I was Mr. Religion all those years ago, theological college for 3 years and everything. I never heard of this thing called two-way prayer. And there's so much about it. There's so much about it. It was unbelievable. And I remember in the workshop, they said that when you start two-way prayer, you have to commit to 30 days solid. And I was like, oh, hang on a minute, just hang on, 30 days? And so what if I miss day 29? What happens? If you miss day 29, you have to go all the way back and start again. What? You must be crazy. Oh, no, I've got to really commit to this. So I did. And I did do the 30 days. I did do the 30 days. But you know what? That was just the beginning of it. My journal is now full because no matter what is going on in my life, whether it's people, circumstances, things, illness, decision making, anything, I know where I need to go. I'll give you an example. I believe I need a new experience with the big book and a new experience with the steps. Excuse me. I believe I need to find another sponsor. So I'm taking that into two-way prayer. I'm seeking guidance and direction and instruction. Because if I think about what I should do, it's not going to work out. If I'm supposed to be connected to the divine every day and try and keep that connection going every day by living this spiritual program, I need to ask, what would you have me do? What is your will for my life? And I find that two-way prayer has been the most helpful thing in that regard to my journey in recovery. Because as I said, I don't complicate matters anymore. I found that when I was, this Mr. Religious guy, my prayers were stale. They were brittle. They were broken. I was just talking to the air, I think. There was no relationship going on there. And that might shock some people to say that, but I'm telling my truth. I believed deeply, don't get me wrong. I believe my faith was very strong, but I wasn't connecting. I had no connection. And that's where the spirituality came in. And, I read all sorts of different religious literature, my daily practices. I haven't just confined it to the faith that I would identify with. All different practices as well with meditation, Some of it I find a bit weird, I have to admit, so if it doesn't work for me, I do it once and then let it go. So, yeah, I think I'll leave that question there. And I believe I will now have to say thank you to everyone for being here. Thank you for joining us this day. And I would like to take us out with the 12-step prayer. Dear God, my spiritual awakening continues to unfold. The help I have received, I shall pass on and give to others, both in and out of the fellowship. For this opportunity, I am grateful. I pray most humbly to continue walking day by day on the road of spiritual progress. I pray for the inner strength and wisdom to practice the principles of this way of life in all I do and say. I need you, my friends, and the program every hour of every day. This is a better way to live. Amen.